Hello world, it's me, Dennis. Today I have my guest, Jonathan Shroyer. Hello, Jonathan.
Hey, Dennis, thanks for having me on the show, man.
It's my pleasure. Jonathan, I've been so fascinated by your career because I see you as such a blend of old school customer service, working through the process, get that human being to human being connection, and then the technology through all the gaming and the work that is coming and everything that's coming. So this is a real hybrid that you have. How I guess I want to start there. I want to start with we're seeing this turn towards AI and the work that is going, but you constantly and all of the work that I see you on LinkedIn is constantly going back to that human being, to that human customer service, taking care of the worker, stakeholder capitalism, where you value the worker and you value them as the key component in order to be successful. So that's the place where I want to start. So can you talk a little bit about what you're up to right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always believed in this phrase that one of my bosses taught me 20 years ago, which is that people do business with people. Now, I think sometimes people get confused that that means that I think machines aren't part of the equation. That's not it. I think a lot of times consumers don't have a need to talk to a person to solve an issue, to get back to what they love, which is the product that they're using, that they purchased, that they're playing, whatever. And so I think that as you think about the North Star of people doing business with people, you have to really think about, well, where are your high touch, high value engagements happening? And that's where you need your people at. And then where are your low touch, medium to low value engagements? And that's where you use artificial intelligent machines, a variety of other mechanisms um, to enable the high value, high touch. Because if your high value employees are doing low value work, then you're not getting the ROI out of either one of those situations.
We have this stakeholder capitalism versus shareholder capitalism. And to me, that really is a Hobson's choice because I mean, stakeholders, if a corporation is a person, then they need to be a good citizen. And
Yeah.
aren't workers, wouldn't Henry Ford say that his workers are part of his capital and part of what he has and what we're doing? Can you talk a little bit about that and what the disconnect there is?
Well, I think what's happening, which is fantastic, is that the next two generations of professionals coming up, the tail end of millennials, Gen Z, and the generation after, are really focused on purpose and people over profits. And I think where that is a juxtapose is corporations that existed in the 80s and the 90s and even early 2000s. They were all about profits, 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 profits. And people were just a commodity that they could use or throw away or whatever. And I'm talking very generally. I'm sure there's
Mhm.
some very very good companies out there that were doing the right things, but by and large, a lot of the bigger companies were focused on profits. And you can even see that, like even with the latest layoffs that have happened in the tech industry. I was on a podcast a few months ago, and they said, "What was your aha moment?" And I said, "Well, this company laid off 10,000 people, but the CEO didn't take a pay cut." That was my aha moment. And I said, "So if I'm the CEO, when I was the CEO of Officium Labs before I sold it, I regularly took pay cuts to avoid layoffs as we were bootstrapping and going through the building. And then when we got to the building phase and we needed to invest, but we didn't have quite the capital, I would take a pay cut so that we could invest and grow and keep the people and so forth." And so I think this flip that's happening right now of purpose and people over profits, I think is going to be valuable. And some people think that there's a tension between that purpose and people over profits and AI, and I don't think there is, because I think my viewpoint is if you're really using technology to augment and empower and enable your people and enable your products and enable your consumers, then everyone's going to get better ROI and better value out of it. I think the trick is finding the right narrative and opportunity for everyone to feel that their purpose is meaningful to them and meaningful, to shareholders, stakeholders, and so forth. So I think that's going to be the secret sauce of how to navigate this. And I think the very kind of emotional EQ leaders out there are really going to do top notch with that kind of stuff.
I completely agree, because here we have, if we have an opportunity to be able to have purpose, if you have a purpose-driven employee, I mean, people will show up for a paycheck. They'll show up, they'll be there, but you're not going to get that innovative mindset, that next idea, that opportunity to take a risk, unless we connect people to purpose.
That's right. That's 100% right. And I think that people also need to understand the purpose and value of AI. So 40% of my job I use AI for. And I'm an executive. And so that leads me to believe that any job could use 30 to 40% of AI to empower and enable them to be more productive and more valuable and more purposeful. And
So
so I
how
think
do you use it? Give me a specific, or some examples of how you do.
so here's a great example. So I was asked to facilitate a workshop session on AI with a bunch of bankers in the gaming space. And I have a 2-year-old now, and I don't have as much I don't have as much evening time as I used to have for work. And so I just opened up one of my favorite AI solutions and I said, okay, I'm putting together a workshop on AI and gaming. What are the top 10 items that I should talk about, and give me the definitions. I read it and I said, okay, take that one out, add this one in, because I know gaming AI better than the GPT does. And in about 7 minutes, I had a perfectly formed, plan, agenda, and a facilitation approach. And then I did the session, and it was perfect because I know the topics. I just didn't have the time to write all the stuff up. You know what I mean? And actually, there's a couple of things that the GPT reminded me of that I knew, but it wasn't top of mind, right? And so it enabled me in 7 minutes, what would have took me 2 hours, to be able to put together a really high quality facilitation framework. And then I went and delivered it 2 weeks later. That's an example of how AI can empower and enable our
That's
jobs.
wonderful. So in the game, I wanted to ask you about gaming, because I have not been in the gaming space, and
Yeah.
this has been one of your areas of expertise. The gamers that are out there, what is the value of being in the game space that works to the intellectual, that works to the strength, that's building something there? Because I have a feeling it's much more than just playing. Because I would watch like kids, I would watch them skateboarding, and I watch them over and over again, and I went, wow, the skills that it takes to constantly practice that, to get something, to get a move down, that's work ethic. So
Yeah.
is that, and the kind of problem solving skills that are required, and this is just me fantasizing about it, you can tell me, the kinds of problem solving and critical thinking, is that part of what we're going in this astonishing game culture that's out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I was on ABC7 in LA recently talking about this exact question, which is, what's the value of gaming in general? And I think there's 3 main areas. One is mental health. There are a lot of individuals with ADHD that are on the spectrum that may have a bit of a struggle home life, and they need a way to kind of disconnect and do something that will help balance them out. And I know growing up, I had a lot of mental health issues. And so I played video games, and it really helped me to be in a world that was somewhat in my control, and that was somewhat, something that I could do that was logical, that nobody was this or that, or, whatever. There's nothing, no abuse, nothing happening. So I think there's a mental health piece, especially for folks on the spectrum, and for ADHD. It's hard for people to understand that by putting them in front of a video game console, it really relaxes them and it helps their mind, and so forth. So I think that there's one piece of it, which is kind of the mental health piece. I think the second piece is the business skills that you can learn by playing an MMORPG is just astonishing. So let's say you play a game like Marvel Contest of Champions or League of Legends or something like that. So it's not that you're just playing this game. You actually are in an alliance with a bunch of other mates. So you're with a team, and everybody on the team has assets, different skills, different capabilities. And they share those assets and those skills to purchase things. They share those assets and skills to partner together, to collaborate, to win against another team. And then they are rewarded for that, and they're giving an incentive, which then they partner together and decide together, well, what are we going to go against next? So it teaches you budget management, it teaches you planning, teamwork and collaboration, and a variety of other tasks. So I think there's the second piece there. And then I think the third thing is there's a lot of ways to get entertained in life. And, I have a certain viewpoint that if you choose a game to be entertained versus watching television all of the time, you're actually doing something with your fingers and your brain. And a lot of games are educational. A lot of games will teach your brain and your fingers to have better eye-hand coordination and other physical and brain benefits, logic center stuff, especially if you're playing like a puzzle game and so forth. I like CSI, it's a great show, but I'm not going to have puzzle skills watching somebody else solve it, right? But if I'm
no, it's a very passive, it's a cool medium, right? I mean, it's
a cool medium, but so I think you learn more in using game as an entertainment. Now, obviously, there's addiction, and you have to be very careful.
Anything can, yes.
You have to be careful about that, but there are an enormous amount of benefits to gaming in the real world.
Tell me a little bit about the Gandhi Award that you got and how you got involved with that. Congratulations on
thank
that.
you.
And can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think so I was submitted, somebody submitted my name. And when I asked them, why they submitted my name, they kind of said that, there was three main reasons they submitted it. It's kind of for a body of work of things I've done over the last 20 years. So the first one was I actually lived in India in 2004, 2005. And I set up education centers or digital literacy centers in partnership with Microsoft, with a lot of the villages in India to help them learn how to use computers, learn how to use basic word processing skills, Excel skills, PowerPoint, that kind of stuff. And then I brought around 20,000 jobs to India or so back in those days. And then I moved to London in 2007, and from 2007 to 2012, during that time period, I did two things. One, I was on the London Business Diversity Council, and I was the diversity champion for Symantec there. And then two, I was the international director for an NGO called Compassion to One. It was an anti-human trafficking NGO. And so I would work with the London Met, I would work with universities to educate and enable students and the Met to identify human traffic or people that are being trafficked and how to rescue them and how to prevent human trafficking and so forth. And then I think the third thing is when I started Officium, I had a vision about, I came from a small town in Texas, Jasper, Texas, 8,000 people, and
which has an awful awful challenge in their own history.
100. But when I was there, there's no tech jobs, right? And so I went to a tech hub to get a job, and now I've never been back to Texas or really any other small towns, even though I love Texas, but I've never lived there. But the cool thing is, like, I was like, with Officium, let's decentralize work and let's decentralize wealth. And I said, so rather than hiring all of these people for my startup in San Francisco or New York or Seattle, I said, I'll get one or two people here, but then let me make this is pre-COVID, let me make the entire company remote. So then I can find really talented people living where they want to live by their family and their communities, and then giving them a purpose, doing something interesting and exciting, right? And so I think the success of that, we had lots of success in that area. The overall kind of network that we built was over 1,000 workers and so forth. And so I think it's that body of work that the House of Lords, in concert with the UK Parliament, gave me the Mahatma Medal of Honor and then they worked with the NRI Institute. So it's really honor. I mean,
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, it truly is. And that's how do you react when you see this huge backlash, this huge diversity, equity, and inclusion backlash that is happening right now? It's happening here in Texas. They're taking away all the DEI from, they're saying corporations can't have it. They're saying schools and the colleges can't have any DEI initiatives. And to me, I don't really understand. It seems to me we're shooting ourselves in the foot, but can you give me some perspective on it?
so I think the way that I look at it is the universe is taking us in the right direction. And what I mean by that is if you look at the history of humanity, generally speaking, in the history of humanity, women are more respected than they've ever been respected. People are living longer, and of all races, people are living longer and they're healthier than they've ever been. People have more opportunities, more wealth, and more capability than they've ever had. When you look at it and from a long game standpoint, the universe is leading us in the right direction. If you believe in God, maybe you could say God is leading us in the right direction. But whatever the belief is like we're heading in the right direction. So I look at it when I think about the universe and where the universe wants us to go as a human race, is I look at it as like a river. So we're on a boat, we're the human race, we're on the river. And this river is a fast-moving, forward-thinking, future, like let's get value, positive energy, aura, but what we do as human beings is we say, oh, actually, no, we think there should be some rocks here. Or, oh no, we're gonna go ahead and build a bridge, but we're not gonna make it big enough for the ship to get past. And so we do all of these things in the moment that create that, then we get stuck for a bit. And then, okay, well, now we gotta unstick ourselves. And how long is it going to take us to unstick ourselves, right? And then we'll get back in the river. So I think if you look at it tactically, there's a lot of challenges going on right now. If you look at it strategically or from a North Star universe standpoint, every decade things are getting slowly better. And we have to remember, as a human race, you can't expect things. You may want things to turn on a dime, but you can't expect things to turn on a dime. So like in my family, I'm obviously a white male, but in my family, I have Hispanic, I have African American. We're a relatively diverse family. Got 33 nieces and nephews, and about a third of them are minorities. And so when I look at it from there, it's like I look at like how can I enable them and help them to get a much better life than maybe somebody in their situation would have had 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. What can I do to enable, to support, to empower, whether it's them individually or whether it's politically or with other mechanisms, right? That's kind of how I look at it.
I really like that as a perspective, because I will tend to go too much in and take it too personally about what is happening now, rather than looking at it in the perspective that it's going and seeing, because then I get paralyzed. Then I get paralyzed, or I get down and I'm not doing anything, but then I'm not good to anybody. I'm not in the game. I'm not in the game and saying, okay, well, what can I do specifically today in order to be able to make the situation a little bit better?
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting is human beings, they're just amazing entities in the sense that one human being will feel the weight of the world, even though it's nowhere near that one human being's responsibility. And so I think like that's normal. Like I've even felt the weight of the world. I talked to my wife, she feels it sometimes. And I think sometimes, the most important thing from my perspective is for each human being not to get stuck and to keep moving forward. Because if we're all moving forward and we're not allowing ourselves to get stuck, then we're going to be making progress. And we'll look back, and like I was taking this psychological exam 2 days ago because I have to go get like a brain imaging thing because I had a TBI, a traumatic brain injury when I was a kid, and they want to do a study on my brain. But anyways, so I was taking this psychological test, and growing up, I had like physical and sexual abuse in my childhood. And so I used to have all of these mannerisms before I started therapy 20 years ago, right? And every now and again, I revisit and like, am I making progress? But I was taking this test and I was like, oh, yeah, I don't do that anymore. And I don't do that anymore. And I don't do that anymore. So I think that sometimes as human beings, we got to do an inventory and say, hey, wait, it may not seem like right now this inch that we're moving matters, but in like 20 years, you're 25 inches in the right direction versus the wrong direction. So I think we have to give ourselves a little bit of breathing space.
Absolutely. And there's so much in our resilience. Having had sexual abuse and the trauma that you had as a child, is an amazing amount of resilience on how we're able to come. Were you able to have adults that were able to either intervene or to get to the point to be able to identify it early and to be able to say, okay, well, here, let's get some support or help or protection as you're growing up in your family or in the people that are around?
I mean, I think that for me, that didn't really exist. But what I was able to do was when it really came to bear when I was around 25 or 26, is I had an amazing partner who's now my wife, who gave me some awesome counsel about seeing a therapist. And then she has been my rock ever since. No matter like whatever happens to me, the panic attacks, the anxiety attacks, the flashbacks, any of that kind of stuff. I don't think I'd be where I'm at in my life without her and without all the others like therapists and other people supporting me. But she has been like the rock. No matter what happens to me, like she's stronger than Gibraltar, right? And so she was the one that's made the difference.
Ah, what a gift that we have that in our lives. And
Yeah.
there appears to me, Jonathan, to be something, without putting a name to it, there appears to be that there is something in my life that that there's a clockworks to the universe, that I will tend to meet the people to meet along the way. Now, I can certainly ignore it and walk the other way, have a number of times, but these keep being brought up to me, these wonderful lessons, these learnings and the growings and the therapy and the healings. There appears to be something that is moving toward the light.
Yep.
If I say that, moving toward the one, if we can do it on a spectrum from a 0 to 1, there appears to be something moving in that direction. And I feel like it's moving for all of our humanity too.
Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, and I think that what's interesting is the more human beings are open to giving off light, then the less likely they are to get stuck in matter.
Mhm.
Because light moves and matter is stuck. And so when you think about the construct of the Zen master wants you to elevate your thinking, elevate your frequency, your vibration, because that takes you from this physical matter state to this state of thought, light, and progression, right? We still exist in this physical reality, but we don't have to be stuck in this physical reality. We can augment it, enlarge it, enable it. And I think that's what you're talking about. The more people that go toward the one are the more people that can move down the river faster, remove the the roadblocks, remove the rocks, the bridges, and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So totally agree.
And it does. And it does. And I think that's where we're getting an opportunity to do this together. And so we never know when it's the tipping point. So we get enough people continuing to do it, because which brings me around to your child. I mean, when I look into the faces of the children today, I go, yeah, it's gonna be okay. They are, you look at your cousins and your nieces and your nephews, you look at and you see how bright and open and kind and decent that they are as a nature.
Yeah.
It absolutely is beautiful.
No, it is. I love my son. He's, obviously kids kind of mimic behaviors, and then they have their
Of
own
course.
natural tendencies. But but he always just kind of comes up to me. I don't know how he does this, but I might be having like a little bit tougher of a day. He'll come up to me and be just, it's gonna be okay, Papa. It's gonna be okay, Bob. I'm like, how do you know?
How do you
How?
know? Oh, it just picking up. So what have you learned about yourself being a father, the experience?
I mean, I think for me, what I've learned is the importance of consistency and engagement. So growing up, I didn't have as much consistency and engagement in the father side. And so I was like when I was in my 20s, I was like, I gotta be a great dad. I gotta be a great dad. I gotta do all these things. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. I did, and then I just never had a kid because I was afraid of being a bad dad. But what I learned is like, it's not really, in my opinion, it's not really about me being the world's best dad. That's about me being the world's most present dad, and then genuinely just caring for him and not trying to push my views on him, but mentoring. And so people often ask me like, "Hey, what? How do you feel as a parent?" And I was like, "Well, I guess technically I'm a parent, but really I look at myself as a mentor and a coach because he's like 16 years away from being an adult. So like what I want to do is I want to mentor him and coach him. I don't want to superimpose my belief systems, my way of life, all that stuff on him. I want to teach him basic things as a mentor, but I want him to figure out, what does he want to do? What does he believe? What are his core values? What are his North Stars? What are his passions? I don't want him to get stuck in believing that he needs to be passionate about the things that I'm passionate about, that my wife's passionate about. And so that's been a learning experience to make sure that I keep it balanced to where I introduce him to stuff, but I don't impose stuff on him, if that makes sense. Now, obviously, there are some
It
things I do,
does. It
like
does.
I do impose no hitting. I definitely impose that, but other things I like. If he likes basketball, great. If he likes the color pink, great. If he wants to go swimming, great. Like I'm just like, oh, you want to go do that? Let's go do that. Let's go figure it out.
That's that's the way Richard Feynman's father taught him. He
Hmm.
did the same thing. What are you curious about? Hmm, I wonder why that is. Why do you think that is? Let him explore it. It's a fascinating. Jonathan, thank you for this time today. Thank you for
Yeah.
the opportunity to be able to get to know you and to learn a little bit about what you're doing on the planet. I'm delighted.
Well, thanks, Dennis. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to get to know you too and to be on the show.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, everybody. And we'll see you again on Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation. Imagine if you were able to watch your great-grandparents tell stories from their lives. What made them laugh? What moved them? How they responded to adversity and triumph? And what impacted their existence? That would be a treasure. Now you can offer that gift to your loved ones. Hello, I'm Dennis Tardan. For more than 45 years, I've been a professional interviewer documenting the lives and times of hundreds of people. I will guide you or your family member through the important stories of your lives using my unique interviewing skills. I'm now offering my legacy interviews worldwide via Zoom from the comfort of you or your loved one's own home. All you need is a webcam, and I will do the rest. Contact me today to schedule your legacy interview.